Oh, hi, Kate here with another video. Hope everyone is doing well. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Helps me build a channel. This video is on Cop City, the Cop City phenomenon in the U.S. There are estimated to be 80 cop cities throughout the U.S. Almost every major urban area has one. They widely proliferated after 2020, in the wake of the BLM protest of corporate America. One of the main demands of BLM was to defund the police. Corporate America came to the opposite conclusion. With all the chaos, they felt they needed more police, beef up the police. There's an independent journalist, Legia Miller. She has some interesting content. She said that maybe she thinks the term cop city is overused by activists. The town of Ellsworth, Maine, for example, I believe 2 years ago, has a new built like $40 million police station, lavish police station. And this isn't a small town in southern Maine. It's kind of crazy, but it's often been called Cop City. Alicia Miller said to be correct, Cop City is any police training facility which has a model city, a mock-up of an urban area of a city. And they've widely proliferated since 2020. And the prototype is in Israel. I'll get to that in a minute. A lot of the impetus of this came from Israel, believe it or not. So, some of the roots of American policing, some people in Europe, specifically Scandinavian countries or the Netherlands or Belgium, are kind of surprised by American police, how brutal they are. I mean, European police can be brutal too, yes, of course, especially Germany or some other areas, of course. But American police are uniquely brutal in some ways. There's the racist roots of policing. Partly, American policing came out of slave patrols. Also, the tradition of British policing. This guy Sir Robert Peel, who pioneered a lot of police techniques. Sir Robert Peel is 1788 to 1850. And like today, the term bobbies is used for British cops that came from, or sometimes peelers. This was used in Ireland, particularly Northern Ireland, was almost somebody's the prototype of a settler called Ulster, the British colony of Ulster in Northern Ireland. It was used as a prototype of a settler colonial state in some ways. Now, I mean, leaving Latin America aside for a minute, a lot of it was pioneered in Northern Ireland, these techniques, and they spread to the U.S. and elsewhere. Those are some of the roots of American policing. In past decades, it was ramped up. There was a war against drugs from Nixon to then Reagan in the 1980s. That policing was beefed up. There was the 1994 crime bill. Joe Biden was behind this. It calls for hiring nationwide 100,000 new cops around the country. Some defenders of Biden point out that the federal government isn't in charge of local policing, and that is true. But this crime bill did ramp up minimum sentencing, ramped up mass incarceration, certainly encouraged and led to the massive over policing and mass incarcerations that we have now. The journalist Chris Hedges teaches in a prison in New Jersey, and he works with kids, young people who are incarcerated, packed with young black kids. Joe Biden sent them there, so that's part of it. During the Clinton administration, 1997, Defense Department Initiative 1033. This called for giving surplus military equipment to the cops, the local urban police departments around the country. Two divisions. There's controlled military supplies, which are 10% of it, which are stuff like armored personnel carriers and rocket and grenade launchers and things like that, or military weaponry. The other 90% are like stationary stuff like that. But still, one source I read said this isn't completely true. I mean, people unfairly blame this Defense Initiative 1033 for this. Actually, the police get everything they want anyway. They always have. Anyway, there was a lot of during the BLM protests in wake of 2014. There was a lot of public outcry about this defense initiative. These cops were getting all kinds of military equipment. There was a case, a small town in the Midwest. I forget, like a farming town. The police were riding around this armored personnel carrier, which is kind of absurd. So Obama put some restrictions on military equipment going to the cops. This was overturned by Trump back in 2017. So some of the stuff going on. Then, of course, this created militarization of police, increasing police that came after 9/11. Then massively escalated after BLM protests. A lot of this came out of that. In Atlanta, I'm going to for the most famous cop city in the U.S. is Atlanta, Georgia. There are many others, of course. The most famous is Atlanta, Georgia. A lot of activism around, especially a couple of years ago. The roots of this go back to the 90s, 1992, something called GILI, GILI, which is the Georgia International Law Enforcement Initiative, and GILI. I don't know if it's GILI or GILI. It was founded, the original leader was a guy, Professor Robert Friedman. He's a professor emeritus of criminal law at Georgia State University, and the headquarters of this GILI are Georgia State University. He is actually a major, wealthy guy, a major funder of APAC, and and a major funder of APAC. And so figures Bernie Marcus, Bernie, who was co-founder and first CEO of Home Depot, the hardware chain, a big box hardware chain. He's a billionaire with $8 billion. Very big donor to ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and many Zionist groups. He was a big donor to. Altogether, he donates like $300,000 to the Atlanta police. Big donor to Gili and later Cop City. This independent journalist, James Lee. I think he's based in LA. He's on Twitter. He has really interesting content. I recommend subscribing to him. He had a video where he talked about the Zionist connections of big Zionist connections of Cop City. Many of the original donors, I mentioned a few of them, but others have close ties with Israel, major interlocking with donors to APAC and the Anti-Defamation League. Very close ties. There's the something in Atlanta called Defense Shield, which is a surveillance operation. People say Atlanta is one of the most heavily surveilled cities in the U.S. This is modeled after similar Israeli programs. And the person in charge of this, I forget who it was, but the person in charge of this Operation Shield said, when we model this after similar programs in Israel, he said we want seamless connection with similar programs in Israel. Other big donors, people contributing to the Atlanta Police and Cop City major. By the way, I'm forgot to mention, Atlanta is a major corporate hub. I live in New England and Maine, state of Maine. There's a stereotype of people have a stereotype of the South as backward and primitive. Parts of it are. But Atlanta is a huge corporate hub for corporate America. Many something like 18 of the Fortune 500 corporations are in Atlanta. CNN, Coca-Cola is headquartered in Atlanta, UPS, Delta Airlines, Home Depot, Cox Communication, Aflac, the insurance, the Aflac Duck. There, 18 of the Fortune 500 corporations are located there. 19 of the Fortune 1000 corporations are located in Atlanta. So Atlanta also, it's mixed race. Largely African American city, so there are racial and class dynamics playing out there as well. And many of these corporations were big supporters of Cop City as well. Also, the real estate industry, real estate was a big backer, and major landowners, real estate industry was a backer. Atlanta, people say it's one of the largest corporate-owned housing areas. Like housing tracts are owned by corporations, like leased or rented out. I guess one of the major corporate-owned housing areas in the U.S. So it's some of the dynamics going on. Also in Atlanta, there's a district in Atlanta called Buckhead, the Buckhead district, which is essentially the north central part of Atlanta. It's upscale, large residential area, very upscale, largely white, wealthy, upscale and residential area, but also what's called the party district, bars and clubs, a large hip hop scene there. Major tourist destination in Atlanta. So back in 2017, the Buckhead district threatened to secede from Atlanta. I don't know the complicated issues they were complaining about, not enough police protection, too much crime, taxes were too high. They were threatening to movement to secede from Atlanta. They provide 40% of the tax basis. So this was part of the dynamics as well. So that's some of the stuff going on. So Atlanta Cop City initiative was their initiative was proposed in 2021, and in the wake of the BLM protest, by the way, wake of 2021, and this is so it was widely opposed. There were 17 hours of public hearings of Cop City. 70% of the speakers were opposed to it. It's in the was to be built in what's called the South River Forest area, sometimes called Walani Forest. It belonged to the Muskogee Native American tribe, who were evicted in 1830 during the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson. They were kicked out. Since that time, it was used as a prison farm. During the Civil War, they thought about using it for land authorities, thought about using it for a prisoner of war camp. The war ended before that could happen. It was used as basically a town dump, tire dump. They took horrible care of it. And so it's considered, there's mostly forest land, considered one of the four lungs of Atlanta. Walani, or South River Forest area, considered one of the four lungs of Atlanta. That is, trees and plants breathe in oxygen, breathe in carbon dioxide, emit oxygen, which we breathe. So it's one of the four lungs of Atlanta. It keeps things cooler, moderates temperature. It was important for those reasons. So also it's near historic low-income African-American region area right next to it. So there's protest against this building's capacity. Why are we spending resources on that instead of spending resources on people? People, proponents of it, said crime rate was going up the roof, raising in Atlanta. But people point out the murder rate has gone down in Atlanta. There are other ways of dealing with this. So the big acrimonious debates. There seemed to be widespread public opposition to this, but was passed through anyway undemocratically. So they're building this cop city. There were waves of protest against it, massive waves of protest against this. So where are we? So then there's several coalitions of environmental groups, coalitions, different environmental groups, human rights groups got together. I don't think the socialist left played much of a role in this, but some NGOs, environmental groups, think of coalitions of groups, ad hoc groups, things like that. They coalesced in the Stop Cop City movement, and there was lots of activism. They were what they call the forest defenders. People with many different politics. It wasn't just a unified group. There were people who would sit in trees, and protect them from developers. Starting in like late 2021, I'm referring to Wikipedia a bit here. I really mixed feelings about Wikipedia. Major issues. It's very much slanglily based on U.S. security state, but locally can be somewhat useful. So I'm getting some information out off of Wikipedia here. So they say, there were the other issue going into this was Atlanta has a film industry. And a big film studio was going to use part of the forest adjacent to the cop city. So there's some protest against this as well. So the official name is the Atlanta Police. I believe it's the Atlanta APF, Atlanta Police Facility. Official term for it. So it was widely opposed by many people. So beginning in late 2021, the contested forest was occupied by self-described forest defenders who barricaded the area and constructed tree sits to prevent trees from being cut. And there were conflicts with the police, resulting in several arrests. By the way, the vandalized property belonging to corporations connected with the APF and Black Hall Studios, which was the film studio which was developing this area. There's some arson, some destruction of corporate property, and I'm totally okay with this. Now, wide variety of the political stances and approach of the forest defenders. In December 13th of 2022, several police agencies carried out a raid at the training facility site. They arrested 5 people, Atlanta residents. They were charged with domestic terrorism, and Georgia has a very strict domestic terrorism law. Any type of major protests are domestic terrorism, and Georgia. The Bureau of Investigation stated that road flares, gasoline, explosive devices were found in the area. Police declined to answer if there were fireworks or something more dangerous. Okay, they were beginning around 2022, late 2022. The police began arresting some of these protesters. It heated up. January 18th of 2023, there was another raid. and a young actress named Manuel Esteban Perez Terran, nicknamed Tortuguita, a young actress from Venezuela. This person was very well liked in the Atlanta actress community. Person regarded themselves as genderqueer, has very well liked in the actress community in the area. He was shot by the cops 14 times, and forensics show that they did not have any weapons, did not appear to have any lethal weapons, have a gun or anything like that. They did not find gunpowder traces. The person was shot 14 times, which is insane. The police are claiming that Turgita shot first, or shot. It doesn't appear to be true. Turgita believed in nonviolence, at least tactically. I don't know a lot about this person's politics, but they did say, we can't use violence against the state. They have a monopoly on violence. They're very good at it, and we can't think to even match. But I agree. I mean, I believe in class struggle as a way of moving things forward. You're not going to, a group of actors, you're not going to win a street battle with the cops. They have the force of the law and the special body of armed men. So you need some kind of class struggle, working class mobilization. Large individual actions aren't going to do anything. I don't know about Tortuguita's politics, but the police shot them like 14 times, which is insane. So this started put the struggle on the map, widely publicized around the U.S. and got a lot of attention. A couple days, about a couple days after this, January 21st, there was a large protest march. Some arrests were made, and then there were rallies elsewhere around the country. March, there was something like a riot. March 5th, 2023, dozens of people attacked the Cop City construction site with rocks and firebombs, damaging construction equipment. Then there was also a music festival about less than a mile away, South River Music Festival. Local bands were there. They were in solidarity with the protest, partly to raise money, bail funds, legal defense, things like that. The police raided it. They arrested 23 people. So they arrested 35 people. They released some of them. Charged there were 23 people were charged with domestic terrorism, which is whoa. Then they were trying to have the narrative of outside agitators, but many people were also from Atlanta. Um, Journalists were kind of banned from the whole thing. May 23rd, there were more arrests. Group of apparently protesters were charged with felony intimidation of a police officer, misdemeanor stalking. Basically, they were doxing the cop who shot Tortuguita. They publicized his name. They put posters around the town. They were kind of photographing him around the town. I'm okay with this actually, but then actually also in March of that year, the AP, Atlanta Police and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation conducted a joint SWAT raid on the group, the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, which was raising money for legal bail. They were legal defense. Three of the organizers were arrested, charged with charity fraud and money laundering. That's way over the top. They The Georgia Attorney General said, "We won't rest until we hold accountable every person who has funded, organized, or participated in this violence and intimidation." Regarding the president, they really went after the protesters, and eventually the charges were dropped. All 15 charges of money laundering against three of the organizers were eventually dropped in September. In June, the Atlanta City Council approved the $31 million funding from 300 speakers, the vast majority who were opposed to the project. And in June, a little later, June 2023, a group of activists announced their plans to force a referendum. There was an attempt at a referendum, and the Georgia state constitution says residents can force a referendum on decisions by local governments if they get at least 15% of registered voters to sign a petition. So in Atlanta they would need between 60 and 70,000 signatures, and they got actually 116,000 signatures for the referendum, but the city council refused to count them. Said the activists had missed the deadline to turn in the signatures. I mean, they really wanted this cop city. They were pushing it through. There's legal wrangling. The deadline was actually extended, but the city's appeal of that decision got held up for over a year. It hasn't been resolved, at least as of April 2025, but it's been completed anyway. Cop City. Then there was a RICO, anti-racketeering and conspiracy indictment in September 2023. 61 people who had been arrested in the forest or Stop Cop City protests were charged with racketeering under Georgia's RICO law. It's the largest criminal conspiracy case ever filed against protesters in the U.S. So they're trying to bankrupt organizations with legal fees and really going after them. It's been stalled. It's still going through the courts, and they waited trial for more than 20 months. It was weird. So then there was another round of protests. This morphed into the Palestine Solidarity Movement, Marie in the land and things like that. The protesters, this movement, are very much aware of its ties with Israel. They're very much aware of this. Very much morphed into a Palestine Solidarity protest. There's still protests going on. Other cop cities throughout the U.S. and there's some protests connected. This is San Pablo, which is a police training facility in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. San Pablo is a $40 or $44 million police department headquarters and a regional training facility. It's the official name of it. People call it like a $44 million police militarized police playground. It's there. There's another one in Nashville, right here next to the Black neighborhood, historic Black Nashville. There are a lot of actors connect in Tennessee. The $450 million called multi-agency law enforcement training facility adjacent to Black Nashville. There are other facilities around the country. New York City is a $225 million police training facility. I don't have details on this. So, that's the situation. It's morphing. Recently the ICE raids and mass protests against it, particularly in Los Angeles, but elsewhere in the U.S. This dovetails with ICE. I don't know what the connections, but I'm sure they're close connections with ICE and Trump brought the Marines, 700 U.S. Marines to L.A., which is a dramatic move. So it all ties together. Israel is the original settler colonial state. So it would be totally understandable. They're going to try out instruments of repression there and then do it elsewhere. Anyway, hope you liked my video. It was a little bit disjointed, but I hope you liked it. Thank you. And if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Thank you. So, as I've mentioned before, the inspiration for the U.S. cop cities is in Israel. Something called Mini Gaza, which was opened and started in 2005. It was in the wake of what's called the Second Intifada, a huge Palestinian uprising. Bit complicated. It came out of disappointment of the so-called Oslo Accords. In the 90s, it turned into a disaster for the Palestinians. Ariel Sharon, who was Prime Minister of Israel at the time, had triggered this. He visited or went to the Temple Mount, which is also the Al-Aqsa Mosque, third holiest place in Islam. This triggered huge riots, huge uprising by Palestinians. Continued for about 5 years until 2005. It was finally subdued. Anyway, this Mini Gaza was opened in 2005. It's officially the hold on. Mini Gaza is officially the Urban Warfare Training Center, 7.4 square miles. It's a replica of a Palestinian city that has 600 buildings on it, mock-up of houses, schools, mosques, and so on. They hired an artist to write Arabic graffiti and paintings of Palestinian heroes like Layla Khalid and so on. It's built with U.S. aid. It's known that U.S. and European troops have trained there. Actually, 120,000 U.S. cops have trained in Israel. And we know that the NYPD, New York City Police Department, has a branch office in Tel Aviv, which is a little odd. Most likely, other big city police departments do as well, but we don't know this for sure. So this mini Gaza, so-called mini, it's in the Negev, on an Israeli military base. It's the inspiration for the American cop cities. There's the prototype, the first one, very, very insidious. This would make total sense. Israel was not the original, but the settler colonial state par excellence. They have to control and subdue the indigenous population. So the U.S. And other settler colonial states borrow techniques. Israel's like a rehearsal for population control. So this was a big inspiration. And we know, like, the powers that be in Atlanta have close ties with Israel and so on.